Hello and welcome back. In this lesson, we'll take a look at building a custom octagonal column family for use here on our grid for our addition to our pier. If you recall, we last left off completing a file where we had our grid lines created next to our existing pier. Now, in order to create our columns, I have a family that I've already built, but I wanted to share with you how I made it so that you could recreate it on your own if you needed to, or you can simply use the family that I've provided. But I at least want to give you an understanding of the process that went into building this particular family. If you can, open the family called Octagonal Pile and take a look at the view called Lower Reference Level. This particular family has already been built, as I mentioned. However, there's a few things I want to point out in this family that help drive its parametric ability to change size. If you select the octagonal column and go down to your temporary hide and choose to hide it, I want to show you the first mechanism that helps drive this family. I'll point out that we have several reference planes. Now these are constrained about the center with equality constraint dimensions for both directions. We also have, controlling their size, a parameter, and this parameter can drive the reference planes. If we change this, everything flexes. Same for the other direction. It's the same parameter. Both are column width. Now, inside these reference planes is a reference line. I'll point out the difference on the Create tab. You'll notice that there's reference planes and there's reference lines. The reference plane tool, if you click it, can only place straight lines. However, the reference line tool can place different shapes. And that's what I've placed here in the drawing already. This particular circle is a reference line drawn with a circle shape. It was embedded at the center point of these two reference planes using the snap intersection and then taken out and placed at one of the other intersections of these grids or reference planes. I'm going to undo that because I don't need two reference lines. The next thing I did was I went and placed a linear or aligned dimension from, a radial dimension from the circle center point to the circle edge, which would be a radius dimension that can be parameterized, as I've already done, given it a name called column half width. So that's some of the basic underlying bones of the family, if you will. If we reset our temporary hide isolate, we'll get our octagonal column back. You can select that and click the Edit Extrusion button at the top on the ribbon. Now when you first get in here, it's going to look like a mess, and that's just simply what happens after you finish building this family. So if I were to select each of these angular dimensions and draw them down to a point where they're closer to their origin of when I first placed them, it starts to become a little bit clearer, a little bit more apparent what these angular dimensions are constraining. It's a little bit unintuitive as to the direction you need to move them, but eventually I'm sure you'll be able to get them small enough to where you can see them separately. One thing I'll point out about each of these dimensions is they're all locked. You can check all of them. They're currently locked in place, which forces the individual segments of the column to remain locked at a 135-degree angle. Now there's one corner that I had to leave unlocked. If I try and put a dimension there, Revit's going to complain and say that constraining this location would, or dimensioning and locking this would over-constrain the model. See? Locking this dimension would over-constrain the sketch. So we can't really lock down the last corner, but that's okay because all of the other dimensions control the angle, and what you're left with here is a 135-degree angled corner. The other thing that's happening is we have these angular dimensions that have been placed as well. And when those were placed, I had to place them such that they went over the parts of the sketch that were angled and then to the center of that reference line that we already placed. That's why we've got 4 dimensions. We dimensioned each of the 4 angular sides. For the other lines, the other sketch lines that landed on the existing reference planes, I simply aligned and locked them to that location. That way, as the family stretches, the ones that are horizontal or vertical on our screen, those go ahead and stretch with it. So hopefully this helps you see some of the mechanics behind the column family that I built for this particular lesson. Other things that you typically would want to do in a custom family is you'd want to ensure that the material is hooked up to a parameter, which I've already done in this case. I've tied it to the structural material. You would also want to make sure that in one of the elevation views, the top of the column is constrained to an existing level. Same goes for the bottom. That way, the column behaves as you anticipate within your project. And once you're done, you can simply load it into your project and close it. And now we're ready to start placing our columns here within the project. I've created some different types. I'll go ahead and choose a 18-inch octagonal pile. And I'm going to choose at grid lines. This is probably the fastest way you can place your columns. We'll select all the grid lines, hit finish. And there we have it. And then I'll just select the columns on the interior, and we're going to switch from an 18-inch to a 12-inch just to add some variety here within our project. The other thing that we'll want to do is select our columns and make sure that they have constraints that match what we desire. For the top, we'll set them to top of existing pier, and the base level, we'll set that to 0 elevation. And then we'll give them a base offset of minus 90. So now if we were to go and look at our 3D view, we should have a bunch of columns sticking out of the water. And there it is. And I'm sure that they also go down quite a ways. So if we were to orbit, there they are sticking below the mud line. The next thing that we can do is we can take a look at placing floors and perhaps concrete beams. We'll use join tools to clean things up. But hopefully that helps you see how you can build a custom column family and place it within your project. So when you come back next time, we'll take a look at building the rest of our deck structure. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.